Welcome, guys, back to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine, and today we are welcome with Torero. Torero? Am I saying that
Torero.
correctly?
Yeah, you are
There we
saying it.
go.
Hey guys, how you
Perfect.
doing?
I just want to say thank you again for making this happen. A friend of the channel, I just had him recently on. Joey Marks told me to get a hold of you and see if you'd like to be on the podcast. So shout out to Joey.
Yeah,
Um,
great guy. Known him for a long time.
I'm sure we'll dive into it. Before we get started into the questions, is there any social medias or anything like that you want to plug? Just let the fans know where they can stay up to date with you.
Yeah, of course. Right now you can find me on Instagram under Torero underscore Galli, Galli, and on Facebook, El Torero. That's where I'm at right now. Working on getting on Twitter, but we'll get there. A lot of
Definitely.
a lot of my Hispanic fans are on Facebook, so that's where I got to be, right?
Hey, it works. It works. You got to go where the audience is.
Exactly.
We are the I Love Wrestling podcast, and I try to start at the very beginning of maybe your wrestling fandom, your wrestling experience. So when did you find professional wrestling, and what made you fall in love with it?
So, didn't really find it. It found me at birth, thanks to my dad.
Fair enough.
As soon as my dad found out he was having a baby boy, got right to buying, WCW figures, WWF. Earliest videos of me as a kid is like just playing with wrestling rings, playing with toys, and it just grew from there. So his love of wrestling transferred over to me, and I've been around it, I'd say my whole life. But
A lot.
the independent scene since 2000, I want to say 2005. That's when I
Okay.
went to my first indie show. hmm
And what was that for?
That was for, I don't believe they're around anymore. It was a man that went by the name, I think his name was something Arenas was his last name. But he ran like lucha shows in the Congress Theater. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that venue. I think
Okay.
it's closed down years ago, but it was this beautiful theater. So me and my dad would go see shows there that that had like El Santo, Místico, Sin Cara. Uh, he went through various names. We got to see big names there as a kid, so that's where I kind of got introduced to live wrestling for the first time.
Gotcha. Who
Mhm.
were some of your favorites growing up? Like, who'd you pay the most attention to?
So growing up, my favorites, lucha wise, I'd say my favorites were Místico, of course. Like as a kid, that was like even now that he's still considered the last boom of lucha libre is what they call him. Um, it was him, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, WWE, obviously Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero. Those were guys that I admired growing up. Dean Malenko.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, Growing up, did you participate in any other sports besides, trying to get ready to be a pro wrestler?
So yeah, growing up, I've been boxing my whole life,
Okay.
as well as baseball. Well, baseball I stopped playing in high school, but boxing has always been part of my life. I actually stopped boxing right before I started wrestling. I had a shoulder injury, and that's when I finally decided to give wrestling a chance.
So boxing maybe was that your first ambition, or has wrestling always been there?
So boxing was like my first ambition, but that was more so that it was something that was always around. My dad was a boxer as well, and
Okay.
it taught me, and I was always around a boxing gym growing up. But as far as like things I was first introduced to sport wise and everything, it was wrestling was my thing.
So if you hadn't got the shoulder injury, do you think you'd still be, pursuing the boxing career, maybe?
Uh, you know, I think I was already kind of teetering
Okay.
on trying wrestling or not starting it. And when I had that little break, that's when I finally decided to dive fully into it. But I think the crossroad would have always ended up with wrestling, because I was a camera guy for a while. That's kind of what reinvigorated my love for wrestling was being a cameraman for Galli Lucha.
Okay. And did you train with Gally?
Yeah, that's
Yep.
so actually Galli, my dad's the owner, Carlos.
Okay.
So I grew up with it. Actually, funny thing, I grew up with like when I was 7, that's when he started doing it. We would do Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows every weekend until I kind of despised wrestling. I'm not gonna lie to you. I hated it. Actually, when I turned 16, I got a job and purposefully had them schedule me on Sundays just so I wouldn't go to his shows anymore.
Okay.
And but around I want to say 2018, he asked me to come back to do camera work for him. And that's where I kind of slowly started to like wrestling again. You know, being behind the camera and seeing it up close, being a little more involved behind the scenes, it kind of had the wheels turning in my head. You know, it had me thinking
Yeah.
about wrestling. Oh, like this is cool. Would have been cool if they did that, this or that. Slowly started getting back in, creeping back behind me, and eventually I just decided to dive in. I didn't even tell him. I only told one of the trainers. I was like, "Hey, is it cool if I come by one of these days?" And I haven't stopped since. That was 2019.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
How long did you participate in training before you had your debut?
So I want to say the first time I got to like roll around a ring where I was training was back in when I was 8 years old. I was actually pretty into it for about a year as a kid, but obviously weren't going to have a kid wrestle. So that never really went anywhere. But once I came back, funny enough, I was training for like 3 weeks,
Okay.
and then they were like, "Hey, we need a body for." It was a toy drive. We were doing a toy drive. It was actually a double header, and it was just I just got in there. I did a few basic things back and forth, and then from there, I basically just haven't stopped.
Okay. Okay. And I'm guessing if you had to call a promotion home, Galley's home.
Yeah, that's home.
That's home.
Yeah,
What about a galley? Because I've been to one galley show in my indie wrestling experience.
yeah.
And the crowd is much different than most other whether it's lucha libre or just the American style wrestling. Galley's just got a different feel. How would you explain what it's like to be at a galley event?
You know, being at a galley show is very I will say the crowd's a little harsher, if I make
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
You know, they're here to see lucha. This is what they're used to seeing when they were kids back in Mexico or on TV. So they want to see some fast-paced movement, some flips, you know, something crazy. So it's definitely a more interesting vibe because you know in lucha you've got grandmas over here yelling at you, you know, cursing your life, um, and there's just so many characters in it. It's this completely different vibe versus I'd say like another promotion I worked with more frequently was freelance. Their vibe is more of how to explain it. It's like the crowd's like super into it and they're very open to everything, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Whereas lucha fans are a little more like, I want to see some lucha. That's what I want to see, you
They're a
know?
little bit more critical of the type of style that they want to see.
Yeah, exactly.
I think one thing I mentioned I've been to one galley event. One thing that really stuck out was I went with my siblings, and two of them, it was their first wrestling show. They hadn't really watched wrestling or been to a wrestling event or anything like that. And after that show, they were hooked. And like they'd seen like WWE stuff and they'd seen stuff on TV. And like me and my dad are huge wrestling fans, and they'd been
Mhm.
around it, but they didn't like it until that galley show. And then now every show we go to, it's like, is there going to be a lucha guy? Is there going to be a lucha guy? Is he going to? So something about the way Galley's presented and the style really, I noticed it can just entrance new fans. Is that something you've seen throughout your time being around the promotion?
Yeah, I've definitely seen it, and it's always an incredible thing to see. You know, we've got a few younger guys that are on our shows now, and they're like, "Oh, like I grew when I was a kid, I would come to these shows. Like this is kind of how I got into wrestling." And I think it's a beautiful thing to see that kind of influence. And it's a culture, definitely a culture behind the scenes where everybody in that locker room wants to make sure that people get their money's worth, you know. that they get like nonstop action. It's more because on an indie show like that, it's more intimate. So they're here to see some crazy stuff. They want to get involved. Uh, so I'm really happy to hear that's how they were introduced to it, and they're always looking for lucha. It's great to always see, the sport being introduced to new eyes.
Definitely. So something that always interests me, especially about the lucha style, the lucha tradition, is the mask and the name behind the mask. So where did you get your name, and what made you choose this style of mask?
So, the horns, honestly, I was really into Psychosis as well as a kid, the
Okay.
horns and stuff.
Yep.
But the whole character came from my last visit to Mexico, which was at this point, I want to say 21 years ago. I was 4 years old. We were there and we saw like some bullfighting in Mexico, where it's a little more sport like, if that makes sense. It's not like Spain where you have the matador, which means the killer, because they'd actually, they kill a bull. And Mexico is more of like the torero. That means that you're just getting there. It's basically just for sport. They just do the ole ole and then they get out of the way. So
Okay.
I saw that as a kid, and it kind of always stuck with me in the back of my mind. And I always, as a kid, like as well, when I was like around the wrestling, I would always play with little characters. I was always in my little sketchbook, drawing up different masks and stuff, always kind of landing on like an Aztec warrior. But this last time, like when I finally started training, I wanted to create something that kind of taps into that tradition, that elegance of old school lucha, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
So having the bullfighting in the back of my mind as a kid, and then wanting to find something more traditional for lucha, I thought it would make a beautiful character to create of the bullfighter. So that's why I come out with like the coat and the cape and everything like that. You know,
Okay.
so that's where this is where that's where I was inspired, and I drew up this design. And my wife actually helped me design the ones on the side and everything. So it's definitely very personal to me.
Do you make your own attires?
I do not actually. I have them made in Mexico.
Okay.
My gear maker, he makes some masks for me too, but mainly the gear. His name is Raul Urquieta. It's him, his wife, and his son, and they make beautiful gear. And honestly, I've never seen anybody make gear so fast. Like the whole Galli roster will place like an order of 10 gears, and I'll place an order. He'll call me a week and a half later. Hey, they're ready.
Okay.
So like
That's amazing.
it's like they're a machine over there. But my masks, actually around when I started the mask maker, he was 17, I was 19. He's been making my masks ever since. He's in Chilpancingo, Guerrero. It's a little bit off of Acapulco, just around that area. So he's been making my masks ever since. He's the best at it, in my opinion. He makes them exactly how I want them, and can't let go of them.
Okay. Okay. Um, Something else about Galley that really stands out to me is like when you look at the card, there's always a legend or a superstar from, Lucha Libre. How important do you think that's been to the success of Galley throughout the years?
It's definitely helped us reach a completely different audience. Not a different audience, but it helped us reach out to more audience. It kind of attracted more people. Actually, the first guy we brought in was Penta back in 2016.
Okay.
Uh, After a hiatus, back in like 2008, 2009, we were bringing in like legends, lucha legends. But if I'm being honest, they weren't really there to work. If that makes sense,
Like
they're
a
a little
night off?
difficult. Yeah, it's just they weren't really there to work with, and they were very difficult people behind the scenes, and we kind of left a sour taste in our mouths about it. So 2016 rolled around, and fans were just asking, please, can you bring this guy Penta? Bring this guy Penta. And we brought him in, and that's where my dad realized, this new generation of luchas, they've got a different mentality. They're here to like give these people what they want to see, and it just kind of just snowballed from there. And it's been really important to like not only to reach a further audience, but also to elevate our roster, I would say. A lot of these guys, they stay a few days at a time, and they'll help, train our guys, teach them new things, make them push a little further, or even their matches with them. It makes our guys push a little further, and it kind of, I could testify to it. I wrestled Aramis Anades back in 2022 for the first time, and I felt like that match after that, I felt like a different person, if that makes sense. A different,
Yeah.
saw a different view on wrestling, and it helped me, push myself even further.
Who have been some of your favorite or most like influential guys or girls to come in from that, from Lucha to come help you guys or to come be a part of the show?
Yeah, definitely the most influential people. I think it has to be Ares, Bandido, Arrow Boy, Aramis, and Ricky Marvin. Those five guys, they've taught us so much. They helped all of our newer guys. I feel like anytime they're in the locker room, it's always so it always brings up the what do you want to call it? The basically the energy in the room, makes
Okay.
everybody
Yeah,
be on top of their game. So those are the five guys I'd say that we had a great relationship. Funny enough, Bandido was just here at my house yesterday, stopping by
that's
for a
amazing.
talk. Yeah.
That's funny. I
Yeah.
forgot they're in town for AEW. That's
Yeah, they're
that's
in
funny.
town. Funny enough, his favorite restaurant here in Chicago, it's right here in Villa Park. He loves the beef stew from there. So anytime he's in town, my dad's picking him up from the airport. They're going straight there, and then they'll head over to his hotel so he could be at AEW the next day. But yeah, it's funny enough. He was just here yesterday.
What's it like being able to see guys like that you've worked with and that have been a part of Galley to now be on big stages like WWE or AEW or even TNA or MLW, things like that?
Yeah, it's incredible to see it. It's like I'm always proud to see it, even if they're older than me. I see them and I'm like, man, like one day, hopefully, I could be there too. But it's amazing to see, guys like Joaquin Wild was here, Mustafa Ali. He's running his school out of our training facility, so we're
Okay.
sharing space with him. He's still around, but seeing guys like that, make it there. Kalisto was a Galley original. He was here in 2007. It makes you to know somebody that made it there and that they were here. I feel like it pushes everybody to think, you know what, it is possible. We could do it. So it's incredible to see.
I brought up TNA. You've been able to work a tag match on Xplosion with Quintero. What was that experience like going there, working for TNA, doing the Explosion taping, and with somebody like Quintero, who's also been a regular at Galley?
That was an incredible experience. I could say that if I stopped wrestling today and retired, I could be happy with my career just from stepping foot in a TNA ring, because that was my favorite promotion as a kid. As I mentioned earlier, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, guys like that, I thought was like that was peak wrestling for me as a kid. Um, but being there, it was just being behind the scenes, getting to see how everything worked. It's incredible, and it definitely helped me career wise. I was able to get in contact with Jeff Jarrett after that show. I actually worked his Global Force Wrestling a few
Okay.
weeks after that, and it was because of that opportunity I got there at TNA. Getting to work with guys like Rhino. Rhino was helping us there, behind the scenes, and definitely a full circle because he was one of my favorites growing up. Seeing him in TNA, I actually got to see him live at Bound for Glory 2007, I believe, in
Okay.
Florida as a kid. So
That's
it's
amazing.
yeah, it's a crazy experience, and to get to experience it along with Quintero, somebody uh, that truly all the success he's gotten, making it on the AAW roster, seeing him on NWA, like that's someone that like deserves it. That guy wants this really bad. So it's always great to experience those things with friends.
Definitely. Definitely. Um, something else that I thought was cool was I was going through your matches and I've noticed I mentioned earlier Joey Marks brought you to my attention. You've had two mask versus hair matches with Joey. What's that like? You know, that experience. I know the mask versus mask or mask versus hair is deep in lucha tradition. So what was it like being able to have one of those kind of, top-notch matches with somebody like Joey, who you have a lot of history with?
Yeah, being able to do that against, Joey was it's a crazy experience. Something I think any luchador always dreams of being in one of those matches. So to do that with somebody that I've known since I was 7 years old, kind of grew up with in a way, and someone who's had so much influence on me over these past few years. It's definitely an incredible experience, and something I'm always going to cherish. I still keep his hair in a jar over here, so I have it in my little trophy room. But it's definitely a great experience.
I got a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go. So far, what's been your favorite match of your career? Like, if you had to pick one, well, what's been top notch for you?
Uh, Top notch for me was, I'd say, I'd say there's like two that are there. It would be that match with Joe Mass versus Hair was
Okay.
the up to this day, that's the most important match I've had. I've yet to hold the championship, but to be able to win one of those matches, I think is the highest honor so far in my career. But that is tied to me kind of with that first match I had with Aramis Henares in a tag match, because that's where I felt I really pushed myself, past my limits. That match helped me grow in incredible amounts. I actually passed out during that match and then woke up and then was able to finish. So I'd say those two are neck and neck for my favorites of all time that always stick with me behind in the back of my mind.
Okay. You know, I believe it was last year. Galli did a kind of like a co or joint event with CMLL. Is that something we can expect more of going in the future? Maybe Galli partnering with the bigger promotions in Mexico and with that lucha libre style.
Yeah, that was a great experience. I got to be part of that first show. Um, I think we're definitely going to see those a little more going forward. I know they just did one this past month. They actually
Okay.
did a double header in Cicero Stadium here in Illinois, and they were also in Atlanta. But they had that CMLL card, including guys from our roster. So it's as well. It's a great experience because you think of CMLL, that's the most traditional lucha, I'd say. That's the
Yeah,
oldest promotion in the world. So for some of those guys to come out here and give our guys a little bit of the rub, you know, that it's great to see, and I look forward to more partnerships. Hopefully we could do something with IWRG. That would be incredible. A lot of those guys that are up and coming over there. That'd be great. The partnerships it already exists, so we just got to keep it going.
definitely. In recent news, as of like WrestleMania weekend, WWE acquired AAA. Is that something as a lucha fan that you are interested in? Maybe seeing what that means as far as the future of AAA goes?
It's definitely out of left field. Wasn't expecting it, but I think it's definitely going to help elevate lucha libre in Mexico, as
Hmm.
well as provide even bigger opportunities for guys down there. You know, because right now, like, uh, there's only so many lucha guys that could end up in on the WWE main roster or on AEW. TNA just picked up Laredo Kid and Octagon Jr. But to see that, I think it's gonna be great to see those crossovers, and I think it's definitely gonna help like any talent, any lucha talent around the world. It gives us a little more opportunity, to reach for the stars there.
That was I was going to say, like, my next question was, do you think that gives luchadors like yourself a bigger opportunity to maybe get on one of those top brands?
Yeah, I definitely think that's going to open those doors. But at the end of the day, we're still also it's always it's everybody versus everybody competing for that spot. So we'd be competing with the best of the world. But I think definitely we're gonna see some of the best talent in the U.S. That carry that lucha tradition forward. I could definitely see them making it to that brand. I think it's gonna open the doors for us.
Okay. What if you had to pick out of anybody that's, active today, what would be a dream match for you? Like what match are you waiting to have that maybe hasn't happened yet?
Uh, I've got I've got two dream matches. I definitely want
Okay.
to have one with Bandito at some point. We're good friends, so like I want to get to that level with him and get there so I could have that one-on-one. But I think over everything it would be, hologram Aramis. I think that's the guy I want to wrestle one-on-one because even right before he got signed to AEW and he got super busy, he was like, we have to have that one-on-one. We have to have that one-on-one. But that's the guy I wanna have like one-on-one. That's my number one right there, actually.
Okay.
Mhm.
Two more questions. Um, One, if you had to pick Mount Rushmore of luchadors, who are the top four all time?
Top four all time. Rey Mysterio, just his influence on wrestling. I'd say El Matematico, just because he kind of helped. He pretty much did help innovate lucha libre to what it is today, as far as the high flying head scissors, stuff like that. That's a guy that really innovated that.
Yeah.
So he's definitely up there. Um, I would have to say last two. I'd have to say Dr. Wagner Jr., Dr. Wagner Jr.
Okay.
That's that was one of the biggest names in Mexico. One of those like last, like old school legends. He's definitely up there. And my last one, I have to say Penta because I'd say he's the next, you know, I don't want to say the next Rey Mysterio, but I think he's the next most influential luchador that there's going to be.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. And I can definitely see that, especially with how he's being presented and how over with that WWE audience Penta
Yeah,
is. It's definitely just time. Just wait and see, ride the wave, see where it goes.
yeah, I think they've been looking for that connection with the crowd for a long time. With Sin Cara, they have Dragon Lee, incredible talents, but I think Penta just has that extra
That it
mile to him that the fans are really connecting with.
definitely, definitely. Last question. We're about halfway through 2025. If you had to set some goals for the rest of this year, where do you want to be uh, come the end of December?
By the end of December, I definitely want to capture my first title. Uh, that's one of my goals, and to get branch out a little more, get on some other shows, like Global Force Wrestling. That was great. But just to branch out more and just get my name out there a little more. But
Okay,
definitely capturing my first title would be the number one on the list.
got you, got you. I just want to say thank you again. This was a great time. Before we go, you want to shout out them social medias just one more time, just in case they missed it at the beginning of the program?
Yeah, of course. Follow me on Instagram under Torero_Galli. You can find me on Facebook as well under El Torero. That's where I'm at. So come find me if you need anything.
Perfect. Just want to say thank you again. I'll leave the door open. You ever want to come back on for an update? Maybe, a little further down the line. I'd love to have you on. We can get part two.
Of course. Let's leave that door open and hopefully we see some progress by then, huh?
Definitely. I'll leave this and see you soon.
All right. Take care, man.